Hi everyone, welcome to round 7 of the Doeberl Cup 2024. I'm on a respectable score of 3 out of 6. Normally that's not a score you want to be on, but it's a pretty tough field, so I'm pretty happy with how I'm going. I'm up to round 7, I own the black pieces, and I am playing Zafirakos, who is the white player, so let's see how I go. So this started off as a symmetrical opening. Both got our pieces developed and our kings to safety. My opponent played d4, I played d5, and then he played a surprising move, a4. As you can see, this move to me doesn't make sense. I would have thought he would attack in the center, develop a piece, bring the rook out, something like some sort of developing move. So I sat here for a bit and thought, what can I do? I could copy him, like I've got in the arrow here. I could copy and play a5, keeping the symmetry, but I decided that I'd rather follow the opening principles. This is why it's not the best thing to just memorize openings. You should understand the opening principles. And the opening principles are you want to develop a piece or attack in the center. Now this move does neither of those. It's not a bad move. The computer says it's still even. Not a blunder or anything. It's just probably not the most accurate move. So I played c5 with my idea of attacking in the center, bringing the knight to c6, bringing the bishop to g4, putting pressure on the knight, and then you can see that with this knight defending this pawn, I'm threatening to eliminate the knight and then taking the center. So I'm actually trying to make active moves to attack the center. My opponent takes my pawn, and now I want to win this pawn back. I can do it two ways. I can play knight to d7 or knight to a6. I played knight to a6 because if I played knight to d7, my opponent could have played b4, defending the pawn. I probably still would win it back. I could play something like a5 and try to undermine, but the simplest way is to play knight a6, preventing b4 because I would just capture it, and then on the next move I can take the pawn, unless my opponent defends the pawn, but then I've got moves like queen c7, I can bring the other knight back, and I can definitely round this pawn up and win my pawn back. So he plays another move which doesn't develop a piece. It's a bit strange to me. Computer doesn't actually mind it again, which is strange. He's obviously prepared this at home, because you wouldn't play this unless you knew it. So now I take the pawn back. So now material is even. I've got 3 pieces developed. My opponent only has 2. I've got a pawn in the center, controlling the center. My opponent's central pawns are back. So I feel like I'm in a good position. The computer actually says very, very, very slight advantage to white, but I don't understand this kind of computer chess. So he develops a piece, and I develop my bishop to this square, putting pressure on his pawn. Now that his knight's moved in front of it, he can't move the pawn, so I thought I'd put a little bit of pressure on the pawn. It also prevents a move like e4, breaking in the center, as it adds an extra defender to the e4 square. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So this square is firmly under my control. My opponent plays the bishop out, so he is attacking the knight, and it seems like he's intending some sort of queenside attack. So I played the knight to the center square, and then he played his bishop to the center here. So he's got his bishop countering my bishop, and I've got his bishop blocked by my pieces. So we're sort of offsetting each other. So this position is, I consider it to still be equal. Material's even. So let's continue. I decided to exchange pieces and bring the bishop in here to counter his bishop. So look at this now. We're both countering each other's bishops. Yeah, I do have the center, but I don't think I have any large advantage. I move the bishop again. Developed a piece. I was trying to consider other moves here, but I was even thinking of maybe potentially playing the move b6 to attack his pawn. Say we swap pieces, getting this kind of a position. But then I've got an isolated pawn here, and my opponent's pawns are still intact. So I decided not to go for this one. I played rook c8, attacking the pawn. He played c3, getting the pawn out of the line of my bishop and out of the line of my rook. And then I decided to play, it was inconsistent. This is a mistake from my end. I decided to play b6 anyway. This move would have been better if the rook was still on a8, as when my opponent captured. I could have captured with the pawn and had the rooks defending each other. Now I didn't want to take it with the pawn because then his rook has the open file. So I took it with the queen, defending my pawn, but I again got an isolated pawn which is under fire from his rook. My queen is attacking his weak pawn, so I thought I'll go in for this. Computer doesn't really like it. This is the bishop move that wins the pawn, and we end up swapping pawn for pawn. So at this point, again, I still feel it's pretty even. Computer says 0. Bishops are opposing each other. He has got a weak pawn here, but it's well defended by his bishop. So there's not much we can do. I played e6 just to make sure everything's defending each other. I like my pawn position. I don't have a weak pawn, so I felt pretty safe. He played c4, looking to trade off his weak pawn, which is the right move because this move actually threatens my queen. So when I move my queen, he can then take, and then bishop takes, for example, and then it's literally symmetrical with 4 pawns versus 4 pawns, 2 bishops, a knight, rooks. Very safe, solid position. However, look, you can see I made a mistake. I moved my queen to b4. A better move, according to the computer, was to move the queen back all the way back to b8, and the reason is just to keep an eye on this rook here. So this bishop can't move now. It sort of keeps in position, because if the bishop moves, he loses the rook. It gives an example line of take, queen a1, defending the rook, and defending the bishop, and putting pressure on my bishop. Swap, 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 swap. Queen goes into the center, and this position is even. I'll play a few more moves, but yeah, this position is even. However, my rook queen to b4 move gets punished by, he plays the correct move, he plays queen to a1. This move, now you can see his queen and bishop are lined up. He's threatening to win the knight. So now I need to move the knight. If I try and defend the knight with my queen, well, the rook covers the square. Can't do that. So I have to move the knight. There's no other way to defend the knight. So I ended up moving the knight. Another mistake. Now this position is technically winning for white. So you can see how in the space of 2 moves we had a very symmetrical position. Everything looked even, and with just 2 moves that don't even look that crazy, doesn't look like I lose the piece or anything, my opponent is in a winning position. What I should have done was not, and this is a good lesson, I thought the knight's attacked, I need to move it. There is another way to get out of this situation, and that is the computer recommends I should have taken the knight first. So instead of just assuming I have to move this knight, I can look at, can I capture another piece instead? So this is the line it's saying that we should follow, and it says that this position is only slightly worse for me, but if I look at this position, I am a pawn down, the bishop's in a strong position, my knight's bad. If I had to imagine this over the board, I would not have gone in for this anyway. So even taking the knight in my head, I would not have seen to go for this position as a superior position to what I went for. So the position I went for was a knight e8, double question mark again, take. So this is the position that I went for, and it didn't seem that bad for me. And my opponent played a simple move as well. You can see how hard chess is. He played a simple move exchanging off his weak pawn, which is a double question mark. And you might think, how is this a double question mark? He hasn't lost a piece, there's nothing there. The double question mark is that he gave up his entire advantage with this simple move. And this is why chess is insane, and this is why computers, you can check your games on a computer, but I don't think humans can see that far. What happens is now he can actually do a potential queen trap on me if he plays all the correct moves. What he should have played was knight to e5, opening up the bishops. So then when I take the bishop, he doesn't take back. He goes rook to b1, threatening my queen. My queen retreats. And then because he hasn't exchanged, when he exchanged a pawn, double question mark, the purpose of this pawn is just to control this b5 square. So as soon as he exchanges this, he can't play rook b5 because my queen could just take the rook. So this one little slight technical detail, that b5 square control, that was his advantage if he had seen it. And the reason it's an advantage is because my queen is running out of moves. It can't move anywhere on this diagonal, can't take the pawn because of the knight, blocked by the rooks, blocked by the queen, blocked by the rooks, blocked by the knight, blocked by the rook, blocked by the rook. I've literally got my most powerful piece in the center of a board, has literally one square left. So if I move it to this square, the rook goes in here, and you can see rook covered by the rook, covered by that rook, covered by the knight, can't take the knight because it's covered by the queen, covered by the rook, queen, that's covered by the rook, that's covered. Insanely enough, this pawn leads to the trap of my queen, and I have to give up a queen for a rook. I have won a piece there, so for example, I could give up a something like this. We could get something like this where I've got a rook and a knight for a queen, and I might have a small chance at drawing this if I can manage to say if he were to help me out and exchange the pawns. Maybe I can just sit back and defend and hope that he hasn't got enough to win. The computer thinks it's lost. But yeah, how crazy that this pawn move, giving up control of this square, who could have seen that? I don't know, not me. Someone much better than me, and obviously better than him because we both missed it. So now that this pawn's off the board, the computer values this as only slight advantage. Pieces get swapped, and I played this move. This took me about 20 minutes to come up with. He's got, don't get me wrong, it's even, 4 pawns each. Don't get me wrong though, I feel like he's got a slight advantage, and the reasoning is, it's just a simple thing. His queen is positioned along this really good diagonal, and he's got ideas of, for example, knight d7, threatening my rook. The rook moves, knight f6, check, and then that knight's really secured on that square. If I have to move my king over to the corner, it's in the line of the queen. So if I ever move my knight, he's got discovered checks. His rook and knight are also attacking the f7 pawn. So if he manages to go bring another rook over, threaten my queen, queen move, rook down, he's going to have a lot of pressure along the 7th rank. My knight's in a really bad position, can't defend the pawn, can't attack. So he has got a slight advantage here. The computer thinks it's slight. Over the board, I was thinking this looks like a real tough defense. But so I played the sneaky move, which my opponent afterwards told me he missed. Rook to a8. So if I can exchange pieces, for example, 4 pawns and a knight each, I can definitely hold that. It's the presence of the queen and the rooks, 2 rooks, that make this position dangerous as he can gang up on me. So I need to exchange pieces. Now there's a tactic here. Looks like he can just take my rook, and if I take his rook, he wins a rook. There's a sneaky move. I can either play queen to e4 or queen to b7, check. For example, check. I can go check. For example, pawn up, and I get my rook back. So and I've managed to exchange a pair of rooks. So it's a sneaky move. He didn't see it, and then if he moves the rook away, well, he loses his queen. So this move, this rook to a8, guarantees at least one pair of rooks come off, which I felt was in my favour. Now there is a tactic which I had to calculate, and it works out okay. That's why it took me like 15-20 minutes to come up with this move. The move is knight takes f7, sacrificing a piece, or so it seems. My king can't take the knight because of the rook. If my rook takes the knight and then unprotects this rook, he can take this rook with check, and then it doesn't matter about the queen move because it's with check, so I have to defend my king and then he can retreat his rook. So I can't take the knight. So he wins a pawn, so it looks like. However, I took his rook, and now he goes check, because if he takes with the queen, then I can take the knight and I win a knight. So he's got an intermediate check. Only one move for me, and luckily my knight's here, because this would have been checkmate. If that queen was open and he moved knight to there, that would have been literally a checkmate. So this knight is the only thing standing between me and checkmate. Luckily enough, that's all I need. Then he takes the rook back, and then again I've got a check in the center here and winning my pawn. So he sacrificed the pawn, but I calculated I could win the pawn back. Now my pawn is a bit weak here against his nice neat ones, so I am a bit worse, I won't admit, but I've managed to maintain even material, and I've managed to somehow hold off his queen and knight from attacking my king. My knight's actually in a good defensive position. Like you saw, it covered the diagonal, it covers the pawn, it covers this square, like it's threatening to come out to this square. So it's actually, my rook defends the back rank, so there's no checks on the back rank, and my queen and rook are lined up against the f2 pawn, even though he's got two defenders. So I'm kind of like trying to hold his rook back. If his rook manages to come across and down into the fight, I feel like I'd be in a bit of trouble, a lot of trouble. So I have to try and keep him busy. He played queen to e7, threatening the rook, queen f6, defending the rook and maintaining pressure on the pawn, which stops him activating his rook. So he plays knight g4. Tactic again, I can't take the knight because I'll lose my rook, and it would also be checkmate. So I bring my queen back to defend, offering an exchange of queens. Like I said before, the more pieces that come off, the safer my king gets. He exchanged. The computer says he should have just kept queens on. Like I said, taking queens off makes my job easier. Yes, I have one weak pawn, but it's only one weakness, and it's very easy to defend. My king's close to it. If the pawn was over on a3, for example, maybe a different story, but it's very close to home. My three pieces can defend. So I won't bore you too much, but we'll go through the ending quickly. You can see how my king defends my pawn, my knight's activated, my rook's in a good spot. Decided to just play some moves. We'll go for it quickly. Try and exchange another pair of pawns. Yes, I have two weak pawns now, but if I can manage to swap this knight off for the two pawns, rook and knight versus rook is a draw. So all I have to do is exchange one pair of pawns, swap my knight off, and then even if he wins this, it's all good. So I'm going for the draw. He tries to play a few more tricky moves, and then he swapped pieces again. I had to think about this one for a while, because if the knights were off, this would be a definite draw. Rook and pawn endings are much easier to draw. If I swap the rooks off and we get to a knight and king ending, a little bit harder to draw. My king's in a good spot, and my knight, my king's further advanced than his. My pawns are advanced. He can't really attack my pawns. My knight restricts his knight. They sort of balance each other out. He plays there, and I play knight here, threatening to take the pawn, or play h4. So he plays check. So I take another pawn, and like I said, I want to exchange pawns and get to a draw. And then I took his last pawn. I offered a draw here. My opponent refused to play it on. Some people like to play it to the end. So I just pushed my pawn, forced him to take it, and then this is a theoretical draw, piece up. So I managed to defend a slightly worse position. He missed his chance to trap my queen, but I don't blame him for not seeing that, because I don't know if anyone would have seen that. So yeah, another good game, another draw with black, which I was happy with. I know I should be trying to win, but these guys are pretty tough, and a draw with black is very good result. I am now on 3.5 out of 7 with 2 rounds to go. No way I'm winning the tournament, but let's see how it goes in the next 2 rounds.